Well, hello there. I'm trying to practice sitting up straight. It's not going to work. I give up. So I got a question for you guys. Have you ever found yourself in a mind-numbingly frustrating situation, like a grocery store line that was just taking forever? Or maybe it was a comment on Facebook that cost you a few IQ points. How do you react in this situation? Every day of our lives, we are dealt challenges that we have to overcome. Those challenges are petty, stubbing your toe, and they can be more serious, like the death of a loved one or losing your job. And so we all have to learn to deal with those things. And there have been hundreds, maybe thousands of religions and philosophies and belief systems that have attempted to help us do this. So in today's indirect message, I want to talk about Stoicism. The ancient Greeks, they left us this treasure trove of ideas about how to lead the good life. And so much of it still applies now, 2,000 years later. But before we dive in, a little qualifier. This philosophy isn't going to be for everyone, right? And it's not going to fix all your problems. But I think that it's a perspective that's worth considering, even if it enrages you. Fortunately, the Stoics welcomed critique, and they actually gave us some tools to deal with anger, too. So when I first told my therapist about Stoicism, she was kind of alarmed. In retrospect, I think it's because she thought I meant I wanted to be stoical, kind of like unfeeling and emotionless.
The immediate assumption is that I'm going to be the kind of person who just pushes down emotions, represses them. Uppercase S Stoicism refers to the philosophy for living described by the ancient Stoic philosophers. They had a very curious kind of reaction to emotion.
This is William B. Irvine. He's a practicing Stoic, and he's written some of my favorite books on the topic. As a general rule, the Stoics wanted us to take a closer look at how we manage our negative emotions. And the Stoics didn't want us to push these feelings down or to deny their existence, but to try to prevent them in the first place, and if we can't prevent them, to try to keep them from clouding our judgment. At the same time, they were interested in maximizing the number of positive emotions that we feel every day.
They were interested in developing their sense of awe and their sense of wonder about the world around them, because if you have developed that sense, you can take a walk outside, see a tree, and you can look at the bark, and it's just amazing. And the different kinds of tree have different kinds of bark, and you can be blown away by that, or you can not even see the tree, which is what a lot of people end up doing.
So let's get into the practical stuff. One of the key techniques that the Stoics practiced was accepting the things that are out of your control.
I think accepting is not quite the right word. It's embracing. One illustration, if those of you who can see this on video, I'm pointing to my ear. It's bandaged because yesterday I had a minor little surgery, and you can sort of curse fate or you can embrace the experience. And I did my best to embrace the experience. It's just practice, because I suspect someday life will present me with a very big challenge, and by practicing, I'll be ready for it. So life can throw you some really brutal curveballs. What are you going to do with them? And the Stoic is going to say, to the extent possible, you're going to hit them out of the park.
This simple practice, embracing the things that we can't control, has so many applications, but I think one of the big ones is how it applies to other people. We can't control other people's behavior, and we can't control how other people see us. I mean, look, there will always be someone who doesn't like you, probably for extremely dumb reasons, because there's probably a lot of things to like about you. Good taste in YouTube videos, for starters. But how someone might feel about you, that's their choice, and we don't get a say in that. So seeking validation and seeking approval from other people, while very tempting, is likely to result in some of those negative emotions. And this is something that gets infinitely more complicated and dumb when social media is thrown into the mix, because now we can quantify social approval.
Social media, I try to stay off of. Problem is, you've just got this dopamine slot machine in your pocket there. And it'll tell you, ooh, they like me. And who are these people? In most cases, they're complete strangers. I'm always seeking mentors. These are people who know a whole bunch about something. And when I encounter such a person, I will just simply go into learning mode. There would be a second group of people that I would refer to. This is a little bit snarky. but they are anti-mentors. As if they approve of something that I'm doing, I should think twice about whether to do it or not.
The takeaway being that on social media, there is not a distinction between the types of feedback that you're getting. And so that kind of makes the feedback questionable. Now, there's a little paradox here, right? Between I'm going to accept my reality, I'm going to embrace my life as it is, and oh, there are injustices happening, and I'm not going to embrace that. And so Stoicism, might come off to some people as being at odds with social change movements.
I would argue, and Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, I think would agree with me on this, that your fight for social change will be more efficient if you play the role of target rather than the role of victim.
So just to clarify here, Bill is making the distinction between framing ourselves as a victim, which is sort of reveling and living in these negative feelings, living in an angry cloud about the ways that you've been wronged, versus being a target, which is someone that sees injustice as a challenge to rise to and to conquer.
Despite my more than decade of Stoic practice, I'm still perfectly capable of lying awake at night angry over some stupid thing that happened years ago, and that's because I'm a human being. That just means I'm a human being. That's the way that we're wired. They were very cautious about anger. Seneca has one of his longest essays is an essay on anger and on the harm it does to human beings and the harm it does to societies, and we go to war and we kill each other. The psychological insight was anger is this sneaky emotion that starts out as just a little spark, and then the key thing to dealing with it is don't let it go into a flame.
They warned that it can exhaust us, it can distract us, and it makes us less effective.
So what we do, we've got these deep inner portions of our brain, this reptilian portion and this mammalian portion, and they're still with us. And so the idea is not just to stop them from acting, but to harness the energy they have and use it on our behalf.
So let's talk about how to deal with setbacks. There are a lot of ways to approach the challenges in your life, and you've probably already had a bunch of things that work for you, and maybe you could even share those below. But the Stoics argued in typical fashion that we need to change the way we frame our setbacks.
The comedic frame, so you take something that happened to you and you turn it into a joke. That requires a little bit of skill. You got to be a little bit quick on your feet, but it's highly effective if you can do it. Another frame is this whole thing. You regard it as a test, and you're being tested by these imaginary Stoic gods. They're like tough coaches. And what they want to do is make you strong and resilient. One more I'll throw into the pile here is the storytelling frame.
The storytelling technique is one of my personal favorites. You imagine that your life is a movie or a sitcom, because sometimes life does feel like a sitcom. In that framework, we ask ourselves, what kind of character do I want to be in my story? What kind of decisions do I want to make? How do I want the story to end? Bill says that this also helps us to live in the present moment.
We're biologically programmed to live in the past. That's part of what anger is about. And to live in the future. That's part of what anxiety is about. And as a result, we find it very difficult to live in the present moment. But if we did, we'll realize there's so much that's delightful, so much that's absolutely awesome.
One of the setbacks that can sit in our little lizard brains for an unreasonable amount of time is when we fail at something or we're rejected. So the Stoics rethink what failure actually is to put us in a growth mindset.
One reason people don't do difficult things is because there's the possibility of failure. If you look into the lives of highly successful people, one of the things that makes them stand out is how extensively they failed. How come? Because they tried something hard to do. If you try something hard to do, there's a really good chance you're going to fail. What makes them special, too, is that they bounced. They didn't break. They were resilient. They bounced back. So they said, I just failed. Let's see, what can I learn from that? So there's a part of tennis that you can control and the part you can't control. What can you control? You can control how hard you train, the strategy you have. Can you control winning the game? No. They just might be better than you are. So suppose you lose the game. Does that mean you failed? No. And you know what? You're going to walk away feeling good about yourself. You're going to be saying, you know what? That was a challenge, and I rose to that challenge.
So the last technique I'm going to talk about today, and there are more on the pod if you want to check out the full conversation, is wanting what you have, right? Wanting what you already have. Humans have such a fatal flaw, right? We always want more. Consumerist culture makes this worse, right? You want more things, bigger things, better things, a bigger house, a nice new car, a fancy gadget. That after a certain baseline, of our needs is met, these things don't make us much happier. And so here again, we're setting ourselves up to experience those negative emotions. In psychology, this phenomenon is called the hedonic treadmill. I actually made a video about it ages and ages ago, specifically in reference to keeping the flame alive in a long-term relationship. So I'll put a link to that down below if you're interested.
So the trick is, instead of going through life forming new desires and then chasing them, figure out how to like the things you've already got, appreciate them, savor them, embrace them. And one way you can bring yourself to that state of mind is through the negative visualization that we were just talking about.
Negative visualization is something that I do every single day. It's a brief, momentary meditation where I imagine what life would be like if this thing that I've been taking for granted was suddenly gone and I couldn't get it back. It puts my gratitude in really clear focus, and it helps me to remember why I want the things that I have in my life, or perhaps more importantly, the people that I have in my life.
You can always be in pursuit of the perfect relationship, and that's one way to spend your energy. The other way is to, number one, pick wisely, and number two is invest your energy into making the relationship work. The worst is if one side's giving 110%, the other side's giving 90%, right? And then you have this kind of asymmetry. And it's only recently that I've become aware of this, is the importance of communication. The whole notion of conversation, that what we regard as conversation consists of me waiting until you stop talking so I can reveal to you what the truth of the matter is. If you encounter somebody and you just ask them sensible questions and listen to them, you'll learn some wonderful things, but for them it'll be a breakthrough. It can be a breakthrough experience.
Bill is sort of getting at embodying this spirit of curiosity about other people, right? Not feeling competitive, feeling intimidated, or feeling better than, just wanting to know more about them. And to really do that, we have to overcome, parts of our ego here. We have to overcome our own self-importance.
There's an element of being secure, self-secure. There's an element of embracing the life you happen to be living. Whoa, let me see what I can do with my life. Let me see how much joy I can extract from this life that I find myself living. And that's a Stoic approach.
I just adore him. And also his voice is so soothing. I was like getting, asthma tingles during the interview. Anyways, I hope this was useful to you guys in some way. Before you X out, please consider ringing the bell down below so that you actually get notified when I post new episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out, guys. Thanks. Take care, my dears, and I'll see you next time.